All right, so we're going to slightly shift gears now. I'm going to ask you about states and institutions. We know that our states and institutions will need to play a crucial role in the development of future technology and fostering entrepreneurship. So we have two very special guests with us now. And here to tell us more about the digital future of Austria and the new startup package, please welcome the Federal Minister for Digital and Economic Affairs, Margarete Schrambuck, and leading the conversation will be the Deputy Editor-in-Chief of the Wiener Zeitung, Thomas Seifert. Please give them a warm welcome.
Hello, everyone. Great to see you here in this wonderful atmosphere. Good to have you, Minister. Minister Schrambuck, we jump right in. Yesterday, the federal government adopted a new startup package. What's in there? What can we expect?
Yes, thank you. Very happy to be here, and I want to welcome you all. And that the digital world and the traditional world is combined. You can see in this moment that you're in this building, and I'm also responsible for this building. So it's not just a digital world, but I have a historic part also. What did we do yesterday? We launched a package, an initiative for the startup community and the startups. And because I'm convinced that we need to shape the frame conditions that startups can be most successful in Austria. And this needs an ecosystem of large companies, startups, and traditional SME that are successful. However, the startups are very special. Therefore, we launched a new fund, a Digitalization and Growth Fund, which is with 100 million euro inside, both in a PPP model shared with private investor, institutional investors and us. And this is something very new, that we shape this larger. We will have private investors, business angels also investing in the projects. So in total, it will be around 600 million that we are leveraging. Another topic was on regulation. A third topic is on apprenticeship. We see that the need for experts is great in startups, and therefore we are launching a new topic. And very interesting, most probably, is the topic of regulatory sandboxes. So we are creating areas, topics where startups do not need to fulfill all the regulations. I'm convinced that a lot of startups are held back by regulations. A lot of startups have to avoid even Europe because the regulation is too high. And we want to attract startups in the way that we fulfill or we create these regulatory sandboxes where you can test and operate for 1, 2, or 3 years without the full regulation being on your burden. This should speed up the time to market.
Okay. And I guess the fact that we are all here in Vienna and Pioneers is a long-running conference in Vienna is also a testament of Austria being on the map in the startup scene, right?
Yes, indeed. It's definitely great to have all of the investors, the startups, and the whole scene here. It shows that Austria and Vienna is a good place to be. We have several frame conditions. It's not only the high standard of living, the relatively low cost of housing, but it's also the fact that we as a government, we are fully committed to Austria as a place where companies should rise. And there is no discussion in Austria about certain additional taxes. On the contrary, we've just launched a package, a huge package, where the startups will also benefit on tax cuts and tax reductions.
One of the weaknesses, at least that's what we always hear here in Vienna, but also out in places like Innsbruck and Salzburg, is that there is a weakness in the risk of venture capital market. That is, the money is not there as it would be in maybe other places. How do you address that? Is there anything that the government can do to somehow, make the market more active?
Yes, what the startup scene and the startups is telling us also that we are rather good in seed and pre-seed with the smaller amounts, but we are not as good in the larger amounts. Therefore, this new fund is created. The new fund is going up to a million and above of investments. And in addition, we have also seen that the banking sector in general in Europe is lacking, let's say, services for the startups. So therefore, what we also did is we will take more risk. We give guarantees as a state, and with this guarantee, then you can go to your bank and ask for your credit line. In the past, and in a lot of countries in Europe, it's the other way around. You go first to the bank, then you get the guarantee. We are now testing this, and we are accepting 100 startups, Austrian startups, or startups who are here, even when they come from abroad. But if they raise their company here, they can address us, and we give the guarantee first and help them to get the credit line with the banks.
Well, the banks, I think that is something, if I went out there to our audience, those who are entrepreneurs, and asked them, okay, what are your experiences with the banks? I think a lot of what I hear is, okay, oh my goodness, they are risk averse, maybe they don't even understand what I'm trying to do. So how can you address that? You also mentioned that, of course, banks, they are not, they're not angels, they're not business angels, they're not venture capitalists, they are banks. And they have a different culture from maybe a venture capitalist. So how can you, is there something that the banks can do? Do you see on their side also, you mentioned that you give these guarantees, that there is an interest from the banking side to maybe also venture more into this field, which is, of course, can be extremely attractive.
What I hear from the banking side is that they are highly interested also. Also, if you look at the Austrian scene, the banks in Austria, they are used to that. They're used to being active in Central Eastern Europe, for example. However, the regulation in Europe is something holding back. And now, as we have the elections for the European elections, they are so important because with the next Commission, we need to discuss one important topic. We need in Europe to deregulate. We need to regulate the things which are important. I would say the large things. Some of you might know I was a CEO only 1.5 years ago. I was 22 years in IT and telecom, of which 15 years as a CEO. And what I experienced is that we have too much regulation in the small things and too little focus on solving the large topics. We need to have competition law in Europe newly established. We need to focus on these topics. And this is something we need to discuss with the next Commission. And banking and financing for Europe is, for me, included into that topic. We need to solve the issue because the banks want to finance the SMEs and startups, but they are held back. And we should not allow this topic to continue.
But also talking about the smaller companies, SMEs, what we see, especially in the IT field, is that even if you have a great idea, let's talk about Spotify, for instance. They are at the moment in a tussle with Apple, about access to the iPhone, basically. And you see that more and more of the mega big companies, big corporations like the Googles, the Amazons, the Apples, etc. It's very, very tough, even if you have a great idea, to penetrate the market, to even get your foothold in the market. Also the Europeans have been slow. Look at the Chinese market. They have developed their own silos. I'm not saying whether this is good or bad, but the Russians had developed their own market. And here we are in Europe, basically totally dominated by the Facebooks, the Googles, etc. And we can't even go in because they have enormous power.
If you look at the B2C side, yes, here Europe was a little bit is behind. We have, I would not say lost, but we have to really catch up on the B2C side. However, Europe has always been strong in B2B, and I've been working many years in the B2B sector. So we have to push our B2B startups especially, and around industry. Look at Austria. We have a 25% portion of industry in Austria. A strong industry is important in Europe and in all the countries. And if you are focusing on B2B, here you need new topics, and something which is very new, which I'm now discussing with a lot of industrial companies, is we need to create a data lake, a data pool, open data, accessible for the startup community. I want Austria to be here very much ahead. I've not told this before, it's the first time I'm telling this, that I want that we are also in this field, we really create not only a paper, but the reality that startups have easier access to that. Yesterday I've talked to a huge number of industrial CEOs, large companies, some of them you know, KTM, First, Siemens, and so on. And some of them have been really excited by the idea that we could really now do it. And this is something Europe needs to learn, I think, a little bit from both the US and China, to have the strength not only to talk and to create regulations, but to implement it. And this is, of course, with the CEO view and not so much with the politician view. We need to have the strength to form up business, industrial companies, startups, and us. I can regulate the situation, so I'm in the good situation that I can create together with the community the regulation necessary, and then we just need to do it.
And of course, there's two philosophies. If we look at regulation when it comes to the IT sector again, and then we have China, where it's basically unregulated. The companies can do whatever they want, basically. There is no data protection. On the other hand, there's Europe. We have very strong data protection, and some people told me that what if people actually ask for that? What if in the future maybe people more and more ask for privacy? Wouldn't that be even maybe a competitive advantage for European companies who are strong in that, who can guarantee their customers, your data is safe with us, we're not selling it out, we're not giving out that information, we're not creating this kind of snooping state that China is obviously trying to do.
This is an absolute advantage that we have, and we should use it, and we should also focus on this advantage. So, and we should export it. Actually, we should request, and we are requesting from the US and from China, which are the other two biggest markets, that they are meeting these standards. And this is what the existing Commission is doing. What I was talking when I mean regulation is regulating companies to an effect that they cannot move. Look at autonomous driving, or look at autonomous, I'm a strong believer in autonomous flying, so soon I will test it out also. We're going to test this. You need room and space where you can test your solutions, where you can run it without having to fulfill the whole regulations which you have for big aviation companies. Or the same is true for fintech. Yeah? We're overdoing it in the finance sector, so that fintechs have to move out. We were lucky, N26 was just recently coming back into Austria. They're opening a competence center of 300 cybersecurity people. But the overdoing it in the B2B segment is not what is my target as a Minister of Digital and Economic Affairs. Looking at China, China has this, system of social credits. This is an absolutely no-go, especially for us as Europeans. We do not, I'm convinced a society does not benefit from that, and we should not go, and we will never go into that direction. So Europe can offer, as you exactly pointed out, data security, a good way of dealing with the data, but at the same time we need these regulatory sandboxes. And here I'm talking not about data which you can identify, but anonymous data, digital twins, digital information which is in a way an information where you can work on, but cannot identify the individual person or the individual company who's giving the data into the pool. So I'm really convinced Europe needs to speed up in that aspect, and I want Austria to be really at the top edge on that.
Maybe if we talk about the kind of advantages, competitive advantages that Europe might have, even that Austria might have, that Vienna might have, or other Austrian cities, I have the feeling that somehow we're in an age of kind of convergence again. So we had highly specialization, and now it seems that okay, things are coming together. This, I mean, what can we not do with a tablet or with a phone, or even if you look at a car today, maybe all the chips that are in it is more important than the motor, especially in the future when we have electric driving and autonomous vehicles, as you said. So do you think that this could be a competitive advantage for Europe and especially for Austria? If you look at Vienna, we have all sorts of industries here, from pharmaceutical, we have IT, we have everything. We're not just a one-trick pony in Vienna or even in Austria. So is that something that you think could help us, that we have a lot of a portfolio of specializations that we can maybe mix together, that some industries work together on different solutions?
Yeah, I'm convinced about that this is a big competitive advantage that we had. I have experienced it myself. In 22 years in industry, I have seen first the companies specializing. So the companies spinned off all the topics which were not really close to their core business. They were spinning this off. This made them, of course, very vulnerable, because if in the core something happened or they were not innovative enough, they could not innovate even in another sector. At the moment, you have pointed that out, convergence is a topic. And I'm convinced also convergence in a country. So we need different industries. It's not just, I was just recently in Korea, and you can see in Korea the mega companies, so the big ones. I'm convinced that a convergence is good. Convergence of big companies and SME, we have a lot of SME and the startups, and of different branches. We are top in life science, we are leading in life science worldwide, and we have a huge R&D centers in Austria of all the big pharmaceutical companies. Around them, there is a lively development and R&D scene and startup scene. We also have in Graz, in Styria, we have the Montan, so in the mountains, and believe it or not, Austria is in the automotive industry very far ahead. Each 67's auto, auto, what's that, the car? The car, yes, auto. And every 67th car in the world, something is inside which is from Austria. So this is something we understand. We have these clusters. We have now Infineon with 1.6 billion, not million, 1.6 billion investment in Carinthia in semiconductor. We have a semiconductor cluster, more in the south, in Carinthia and in Styria. We have the steel industry and everything, and machine industry around Linz. We have also in Vorarlberg the industry of producing different packaging. We are also leading. We have headquarters of international paper companies like Mondi. Their international headquarters is here in Vienna. Knowing that I've been working in larger markets and in Austria, the benefit is that everything is rather close together, and we like to network a lot. So we are networking from different branches, we are connecting people. This is also what the Pioneers Festival does. People are telling me that this is like being in a big hub, in an accelerator, where you have people available, and Austria, as it is not as large as Germany, France, or other markets, you can network with the people, get access much easier to a CEO. And I'm regularly doing this. I'm inviting CEOs with startups and bringing them together because this is a big advantage we should use.
Yeah, that reminds me also of the Austria of the 1900s, when Vienna was the Silicon Valley of that age, where people like Freud and people like, people from physics, from science, even people like Egon Schiele or Klimt, they actually met each other, they went to the salon, had a coffee, and something creative came out of it. So it seems maybe if everything goes well, that Vienna could be that place again, where people, as you said, people meet and from different sciences, from different...
Yeah, we have done a lot into that direction. So I think it's the full package of Vienna and of Austria as a whole. I'm always saying what we need to focus also more is that we combine these activities in the startup scene with the outdoor scene. Austria has so much to offer. If you're in Carinthia, around Infineon is supporting their startups really heavily, and at the same time, they're giving the possibility to use all the outdoor possibilities in the mountains, the skiing, and so on. So the good thing is this combination. I've heard from some people also working in Silicon Valley and other areas of the world that yes, there is a lot of success there, and yes, there's a lot of money there. But here you can do it. Our target is that you can do it here at the same speed if you want, with a high quality of living, especially if you have already kids or you are here with your family, with low cost of living, high salaries, and a good tax surrounding, and a government which is supportive, good mountains, beautiful culture. So that is what we have to offer.
Thank you very much, Minister. We're already over time. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Minister Schramböck. Thomas, appreciate it.